Did you know that in the past 74 finals that took place in NBA history, about 89%, or a total of 65 championships, were taken home by either the number 1 or number 2 seeded team, while the remaining 9 were split between the 3rd, 4th, and 6th seeds? Sheesh, guys. Whoever said that regular season records don't count hasn't studied the history books. Anyway, in case you were wondering, the top 2 lowest seeds that won an NBA title are the 4th seeded Boston Celtics in 1969 and the 6th seeded Houston Rockets in 1996. Anywho, this season, history might be in the NBA, because for the first time ever in NBA history, an 8th seeded team might just win the championship. Can the Brooklyn Nets pull this off? I love the drama between the Nets and the 76ers this season. KD and Joel have been chirping back and forth. James Harden decided that he'd have an easier time winning a championship elsewhere, might have faked a hamstring injury, then bolted for Philly. And Ben Simmons, decided to practice dunking in Philly to spite the fans. Despite all this drama though, the 8-seeded Brooklyn Nets just destroyed the MVP frontrunner Joel Embiid and the Philadelphia 76ers by almost 30 points on their home turf. 76ers fans came to boo Ben Simmons, but they ended up booing their own team.
And now here come the boos from the fans to the Sixers.
Hilarious. Anyway, the Philadelphia 76ers are a team that many believe can topple the Eastern Conference powerhouses like the Heat and the Bucks. But the Nets, well, they just casually walked onto their home court and just gave it to them, without even breaking a sweat. Joel Embiid looked broken, and James Harden looked like he was regretting his decision.
Defense by the Nets. Ahead to Kyrie, 3 on the fly. Core! Now Durant, the hesitation, and he'll jackhammer it in.
This furthermore begs the question again. Can the Brooklyn Nets pull the unthinkable by winning an NBA championship as the 8th seed in the East? Well, let's dive in a bit more into the history books. There are just a couple of 8-seeded teams that shocked the world by pulling off major upsets in the first round. The 1994 Denver Nuggets, for example.
Races the ball and the unlikely upset, one of the great upsets in
and the 2007 We Believe Golden State Warriors.
will happen, not just with them scoring, but then also it open up.
Though these two teams managed to shock the basketball world, just like most other fairy tales, reality slapped them real hard in the next round as they got weirdly booted out by the same team, which happened to be the Utah Jazz. The farthest an 8th-seeded team has ever gone actually happened in the 1999 lockout season, when the New York Knicks had a stellar Cinderella run in the playoffs by being the first and only 8-seeded team to compete in the NBA Finals, though they too fell short. But the difference between all the other 8th-seeded teams and the Brooklyn Nets is they've got KD and Kyrie. These two are unstoppable offensive options, and as long as they're healthy, the Brooklyn Nets are a dangerous team to gamble against. I mean, before Kyrie got injured in Game 3 of the 2021 Eastern Semis, the Nets were making the defending champs look like breakfast. And as long as you have these two dead-eyed bucket getters on your team, at the same time, there's a high chance that you win ball games because they can individually rip defenses apart. Allow me to show you. Here's the Slim Reaper doing an ISO on top of the key. The Pacers put Torrey Craig on him since he's their best perimeter defender. Well, KD doesn't care about that, and he just shrugged him off.
Indiana's 4 of 5 from long range. Durant's got 11. Craig goes down. Durant is gonna...
Oh my goodness. And when you try to close on him, KD has handles like a guard, which is totally unfair, and he can get to the rim at ease with those long strides of his. I still can't believe this guy played with Steph and Clay. How unfair was that? Anyway, Kyrie can also single-handedly break defenses down, and he routinely puts defenders on skates with his sick handles. Putting multiple bodies on Kyrie doesn't really work either, because he's too quick for them and he has that ridiculous jelly package in his arsenal to finish plays.
Irving cuts inside, dances free, and lays it in.
Both KD and Kyrie can explode for 50 on any given night, so if there's any 8th-seeded team that can pull off winning the championship, then there's no doubt that I'll be putting my money on the Nets. And by the way, speaking of betting, the majority of sports betting sites are actually placing the Nets as one of the favorites to win the championship over elite Eastern Conference teams like the Bucks and the 76ers, despite their current standing. That's crazy. Hear that again. Despite being the 8th seed, they're favorites to come out of the East. I don't blame the betting sites though. I mean, they got rid of James Harden in exchange for an elite shooter in Seth Curry, along with 2 defensive stouts in Andre Drummond and Ben Simmons. The Nets have now become more of a balanced team with Harden out of the picture, and when you got an all-NBA defender paired with 2 of the most lethal scorers the NBA has ever seen, then you got yourself a new big 3 that pretty much dominates both ends of the floor. Now, I know you'll say that Simmons can't shoot, yada yada yada, and he might have a hard time fitting into an offensive-minded team like the Nets. But despite all the slander that has gone on against his name, this guy is a 3-time All-Star, a steals leader, and a 2-time All-Defensive First Team member. And I think Simmons will be mainly anchoring the defense while facilitating and finding the open man, much like what Draymond Green does for the Dubs. And speaking of their new acquisition, why don't we take a look on how Ben Simmons can help the Nets in their quest to grab the NBA championship? Simmons can disrupt passes using his long arms, and despite his shooting struggle, he could still flush it home with authority.
To Toronto. There's a steal by Simmons, and he'll solo.
Offense. Look at Simmons.
Just imagine how crazy it'll be to watch Simmons throw ridiculous dimes like this around KD and Kyrie.
Between their legs, Embiid!
Steve Nash was smiling ear to ear after learning of Simmons' arrival, and in an interview, he's quite optimistic as to what Simmons can contribute for the team. Ben does 1,000 things on the basketball court, and shooting is not one that I'm dying to see. He's an all-star basketball player and has incredible potential to affect games with all the other things he does. I want him to get out there and be dynamic. It's pretty safe to say that the 2022 Brooklyn Nets are probably the strongest 8th-seeded team in NBA history. Their lineup is pretty stacked from top to bottom, as they have 3 of the top 20 players currently in the league. The only downside for the Nets team is that their 3 superstars have yet to play together as a complete unit for various reasons. And as of today, the Nets still have 14 more games left in their regular season schedule to try and figure out things before heading to the play-in tournament. If the playoffs start today, the Nets would face the Raptors in the play-in tournament. Should they lose against the Raptors, the Nets will face either the 9th-seeded Hawks or the 10th-seeded Hornets. A win against either of those 2 teams will finally allow the Nets to secure the 8th seed and face the Heat in the first round. The Bulls in the second round, then in the Eastern Conference Finals, it'll be a dream matchup if the Nets were to match up with the 76ers. I mean, with the trash talk going on between KD and Embiid, and with all the other trade stuff in between, it'll perhaps be the best playoff series matchup we've seen in over a decade. Then after that, if the Nets come out on top, we'll finally be able to see if the Brooklyn Nets can do something never done in the history of the NBA. Anyway, have you ever seen a thief in the NBA? If not, then just click here. Gary Payton II is not a basketball player. He's a professional thief, and I show exactly why in this video here, and I'm sure you'll love it. So don't waste your time, click the video guys, and like always, I'll see you on the other side.